For many years, nobody talked about one of the biggest breakups in car TV history. Fans asked questions, talked about it online, and argued non-stop about what really happened behind the scenes of wheeler dealers. But now, Edd China, the tall, quiet mechanic who wore orange gloves and became super famous, is finally talking. And what he's saying about the show and about his old partner Mike Brewer might change everything you thought you knew. It starts with a simple truth. Wheeler Dealers was never just another car show. It was huge around the world, a show that brought in millions of viewers by mixing Brewer's smooth talking and deal-making with Edd's amazing skills in the garage. Together, they seemed perfect, a team that would last forever. But as Edd speaks up, he's making it clear that things were never as great as they looked. In his latest words, Edd talks about problems that went much deeper than just different ideas about the show. He talks about a pattern of pressure, a push toward making things more entertaining that hurt the honesty and skill of the work. He talks about hurts that are still there, and about choices that made him leave, not just likely, but necessary. And the damage wasn't just about work. Edd's exit back in 2017 shocked all the fans. Brewer was suddenly seen as the bad guy. And Anstead would later face the same anger, and now Mark Elvis Priestley carries the weight of everyone's hopes. Through it all, Brewer has stayed the same, but Edd's words suggest that the price of keeping Brewer as the leader may have been way higher than fans ever knew. So, what exactly did Edd say, and why now? By the end of this story, you'll hear the one shocking thing that fans never expected. A statement that doesn't just bring back old problems, but might rewrite the whole story of Wheeler Dealers itself. Before all the fights, before the split that surprised fans everywhere, Edd China was the unlikely hero of Wheeler Dealers. Standing at 6 feet 7 inches tall, with blonde hair and bright orange gloves, Edd didn't look like your typical TV mechanic, but he had something few people on television did. He was real. He was a true engineer, an inventor, and a craftsman who could make impossible things look easy. Long before the show, Edd was playing around with weird creations. A motorized couch that could legally drive on the road. A floating armchair. Because Edd didn't just fix cars. He explained how and why, making the process easy to understand with clear and patient teaching. The team worked great. More and more people watched. The show spread around the world, and for over 10 years, the pair seemed like they couldn't be stopped. Edd became more than just a TV star. He became a teacher to millions of people who dreamed of working on their own cars. But success has a way of making problems bigger, and as the show grew bigger, so did the cracks forming behind the workshop doors. On TV, Mike Brewer and Edd China looked like the perfect team, the funny dealer and the calm mechanic. Two halves of a winning recipe. But off-camera, the reality was more complicated. As the years went by, reports started coming out about growing tensions between them. Tensions based not on personality, but on beliefs about the show. Edd wanted the show to stay true to its purpose, a show that taught people and respected them by showing the hard work behind each fix. Bale fought for honesty, for longer technical parts, for giving viewers the real nuts and bolts of building cars. Brewer, along with the showmakers, leaned toward entertainment. They pushed for faster pacing, more focus on deals and drama, less time in the workshop. To Edd, this wasn't just about editing choices, it was about doing the right thing. He believed viewers deserved to see the whole picture, not just a polished short clip. Brewer, however, was focused on keeping the show easy to watch for everyone. The balance that had once made Wheeler Dealers special was slowly changing. In interviews, Edd now says that these creative arguments left lasting hurts. He talks about feeling like he wasn't valued, as though the main thing he brought to the show, the details, the teaching, the heart of the repairs, was being pushed aside for flash and show. And he makes it clear the pressure wasn't just from the TV network. The relationship with Brewer played a role. Fans had always thought something more than creative differences was happening. Edd's recent words confirm what many feared. The cracks in his partnership with Brewer weren't just about work, they were personal. The year 2017 marked the big change. When Edd China announced he was leaving Wheeler Dealers, fans were shocked. For over 10 years he had been the steady hand in the workshop, The reason millions watched. Suddenly, he was gone. The official reason Edd gave was changes to how the show was made. The show was being reorganized, and his workshop parts, the detailed explanations fans loved, were being cut down. Edd refused to give in. In his own words, he felt the quality and honesty of the show were in danger, so he walked away. But the damage was immediate. Fans didn't just feel sad about his exit, they needed someone to blame. And the target was clear: Mike Brewer. Almost overnight, Brewer was seen as the villain, blamed for driving Edd out. Social media exploded with anger, online forums filled with outrage. At car events, Brewer faced boos and heckling from crowds. The split didn't just break the show, it broke the audience into pieces. Brewer defended himself, saying Edd's departure was his own choice, but the story had already taken hold. Edd was seen as the honest craftsman who stood up for doing good work. Brewer was cast as the person who put entertainment first. Now, with his recent statements, Edd has shown even more that his departure wasn't just about editing or how the show was made. It was about years of frustration, about feeling like he wasn't appreciated, and about wounds that still haven't healed. His words confirm what fans have long suspected. The break wasn't just about work, it was personal. And with that news, the deepest fight in wheeler dealers' history has come roaring back to life. For years after he left, Edd China chose to be diplomatic. He avoided direct attacks on Mike Brewer, choosing instead to focus on his own projects and independent work. But in his most recent words, the mask slipped. For the first time, Edd shared openly how he truly felt about his time alongside Brewer. And the picture he painted was sad. He showed that he often felt underappreciated. Despite being the one in the workshop, the one who actually put in the blood, sweat and grease, the spotlight rarely fell on him. Brewer was the showman, the dean. He felt pushed out, cornered into a spot where giving in meant losing his values, and for a man who took pride in honesty, that was never an option. When fans heard these words, it hit hard. They'd always suspected the split went deeper than creative differences. Hearing Edd confirm it gave their anger new life. For them, it proved years of suspicion. The man they trusted most had been sacrificed for the sake of a show that forgot what it was supposed to be. When Ant Anstead replaced Edd China, the pressure couldn't have been higher. Fans were furious, doubtful, and many said outright that nobody could replace Edd. But Ant, a former police officer turned builder and designer, had charm of his own. He threw himself into the role with excitement, and for a time it looked like Brewer had managed to keep the ship steady. On camera, the Brewer and Ant team worked. Ant was younger, easy to relate to, and brought fresh energy into the series. He put his own style on the builds, mixing modern design with classic restorations. Slowly, some fans warmed up to him, but whispers began to surface almost right away. Ant had goals outside the show. His own design projects, new TV opportunities, and personal businesses. Rumors suggested tension was building once again. The Brewer and his co-host, but between Ant and the showmakers who controlled the format. And just a few years later, the cycle repeated itself. Ant was gone. Officially, the explanation was location. Brewer wanted to move the show back to the UK, while Ant stayed in the US, but fans weren't convinced. To them, it felt like the same thing happening again. Another talented mechanic brought in, another broken partnership. And once again, Mike Brewer remained the only person who stayed. Now with Edd speaking out, he's making it clear that Ant's departure wasn't a coincidence. The same pressures that drove him away had eventually pushed Ant out too. And in Edd's view, that says more about how Wheeler Dealers works and the man at its center than it does about the mechanics who keep leaving. When asked directly about Ant Anstead's exit, Edd China didn't hold back his words. He called it predictable. In his eyes, the environment of Wheeler Dealers had become toxic for mechanics. The formula he suggested was simple. Mechanics were the backbone, doing the hardest work, while Brewer remained the ever-present face. Over time, that imbalance wore people down. Edd felt bad for Ant. He understood the pressures, the endless filming schedules, the push from showmakers to gloss over real technical detail. the strain of working alongside a co-host who controlled the story. For Ant, who had his own creative goals, it was only a matter of time before he too reached his breaking point. Fans listened closely to Edd's comments. For years they'd argued online about who was really to blame for the departures. Edd's opinion seemed to confirm their suspicions. Meanwhile, Mike Brewer remained untouched, the show adapting around him while his partners rotated out. What hurt most was Edd's tone. He wasn't bitter, he was matter-of-fact. He described Ant's exit not as a tragedy, but as something that was bound to happen, in a system that valued showmanship over craftsmanship. To Edd, it was never about Ant's talent or commitment. It was about a structure that made it impossible for him to succeed long-term. Simmons. Mex, with those words fans felt proven right. The hero of the workshop had spoken, and his message was clear. The cycle would repeat as long as the same formula remained. And it left everyone wondering how long before Elvis Presley faces the same fate. At least step into the role and handle the pressure that had driven away both Edd China and Ant. The answer came in the form of Mark Elvis Presley, a respected former Formula One mechanic with years of high-pressure pit lane experience. On paper, Elvis was the perfect choice. He had technical skills that no one could question, having worked with McLaren during some of their most competitive years. He was polished, well-spoken, and capable of handling complex builds. To the showmakers, he seemed like anyone could truly survive under the same pressures that had pushed him and Ant away. His comments were not mean, but they carried a warning. He hinted that the cycle was bigger than any one mechanic, and that unless something changed, Elvis might eventually face the same fate, and that suggestion stuck with fans. Was Elvis simply the next chapter in a repeating story, or could he finally break the pattern that defined the Brewer era of wheeler dealers? Edd's comments sent shockwaves through the fanbase, bringing back old debates that had never really gone away. Online forums, social media threads, and YouTube comment sections exploded with arguments. On one side were the Edd loyalists who felt his words confirmed everything they had believed since 2017, that Mike Brewer put himself and the show's flash over the people who actually built the cars. On the other side were Brewer's defenders who argued that without him, the show wouldn't exist at all. The conversations became heated. Fans picked apart every interview clip, every word Edd said. Some pointed out how Ant's exit looked just like Edd's. And now, with Elvis in the hot seat, the pattern was clear as day. History always repeats itself, one fan wrote. Another argued, Brewer is the glue, but maybe the glue is toxic. Even within fan communities there was division. Was Edd being fair by bringing back these wounds years later? Or was he finally giving fans the truth they had always wanted? No matter what people thought, one fact was clear. The comments brought new life into the debate, dragging wheeler dealers back into the headlines, not for its car restorations, but for its drama. And that drama was exactly what made Edd's final statement so powerful, because just when fans thought they'd heard it all, he dropped the words that no one expected. Words that didn't just confirm the fight, but made it permanent forever. Edd's final words hit like a bombshell. He admitted that he would never return to wheeler dealers as long as Mike Brewer remained at the helm. It wasn't said lightly. For years, fans had held on to the hope of a reunion, imagining Edd and Mike making up, fixing cars side by side once again. But Edd's words shut the door on that dream completely. He described Brewer as the showman, the face who never changed, while mechanics came and went. In his view, the way the show worked made mechanics disposable, and that was something he could never return to. Instead, Edd revealed that he was far happier working on his own, on his YouTube channel, on side projects, and on builds where he controlled the story. For him, freedom meant being real and honest. No edits cut